Hey Seedlings, welcome back to another video. So in this video, I'll be taking a different route from what I usually take. And in this video, I'll be making a video essay about what got me into gaming. So it will be divided into 4 parts. The first part will be the King's Avatar and why it brought me into gaming. The second part is the game that I first played and why I still love that game today, even though it's now dead. And then the third part will be the second game that I play and how my choices shape it. And lastly, what is to come. So be sure to watch until the end so that you understand my journey as well as learn something from my journey. Okay, let's get into the video. Part 1. The King's Avatar and what about it that got me into gaming? I wasn't a type of person who really liked gaming in the sense of an MMO, RPG, or something like anything multiplayer, really. One, because most multiplayer games are paid, and again, little old me is pretty stingy at the time. I don't want to spend on games that I probably wouldn't play forever, I guess. And then the next part is I really don't like interacting with people and playing with my games. And so at that time, I was playing like puzzle games, mystery games, and games that would require your wits, your brains, or whatever. I really, really liked those games. I played those games. And other than that, I like novels and anime. And anime-based games, which are usually multiplayer, but I played them all by myself because that's how I am. Until I encountered a novel by the title of The King's Avatar. Spoiler alert for The King's Avatar novel. Again, I could not tell you to skip the entire part because every single part of this, like part 1, will be spoiled about the King's Avatar. Alright, so first, what is The King's Avatar? The King's Avatar is a novel about esports written by Butterfly Blue. It follows the journey of Ye Xiu as he was cast away from his previous esports team as he built a new esports team with new blood and a new vision. First, why is The King's Avatar that one novel that eventually got me into gaming? Prior to this, I actually read a lot of gaming novels and even watched a gaming anime called Sword Art Online. But even Sword Art Online could not conquer my desire not to play multiplayer games because, well, that desire is so big. I just don't want to interact with people at the time. And I don't see how fun it is to interact with people. And so, even though I watch Sword Art Online, I play their online game, I guess. That game is still a single player game. You don't even need to do anything. You just leave the whole game on auto and as you play. Continuing on with that journey, I encountered a novel by the title of The King's Avatar, and as soon as I started reading it, I became hooked. But only for a short while, because me at the time wasn't the same as me now. At the time, I liked reading physical books. And I feel that reading physical books are much better because of the feel of paper in my hands and the smell of ink that came out of the book. Maybe the smell of dust and paper that's yellowing or whatever. But after some time, I encountered the animated version of the King's Avatar, and it it was spectacular. I really enjoyed that animation, and going back and reading the novel, although they took some discrepancies, like for example, they got rid of several of the characters that is supposed to happen in the novel and the animation, it's still a very good animation that stayed true with what they are trying to express. The action, the strategizing. So instead of having to imagine the scene of every single move that each of the character made in the book, you can just see it. And as soon as you see it, all the text that you've read from the book just went through your head. Oh. It's like there's this part where I think he was doing the dragon raises its head, which is an attack using a previous attack. I forgot. Dragon strikes the ranks, if I remember correctly, which is a straight dragon attack. But they changed, but like how they timed it perfectly, and seeing the animation just makes you be like, oh my gosh, so that is how it's supposed to happen. All of that imagination just went out, and instead that scene from the animation became kind of like subbed in your head with the text from in-game on how they do that. Another part is how Yeshua cleared the domain that leads to the like the higher domain. Again, I forgot the name, but still I remembered how he used a gun to cross and to climb, and like shooting onto certain points would repel you back, and you're able to fly up that way. And I was, oh my, that was so great. And how again, every single movement is literally subbed with a text from the novel in my head. And for any of you who doesn't even read the novel, the animation is still a great representation of a game, in my opinion. Sadly, Glory doesn't exist. Whatever mechanics Glory have doesn't exist. And the saddest part is the best feature in Glory that I really like doesn't exist. Well, there are two best features. One of the best features is the ability for you to create a character based on your likeness. So to buy a card, sometimes you can make an account by transferring one of your like pictures inside, and you're able to make a character with the same appearance as you in game. That's amazing, right? But it's more like a you, but stylized, to be honest. And then there's the second part, which is silver equipment creation. So with an extension tool, you could make silver equipment in Glory. And silver equipment is completely customizable. It's not like putting gemstones on a weapon, which gives the weapon buffs. But no, you completely create a weapon from scratch using materials that you can find in-game, that you could use to craft in-game weapons using in-game recipes, but you can also transfer these items into your silver equipment creation tool and create it all by yourself based on design, what buffs you want, and even like materials, and you can even upgrade it. It was cool. And even right now, as I relive that memory, it's still cool. And the final straw that brought me to actually play a game that is multiplayer is this line. Glory is not a single player game. It's a multiplayer game. It's an MMORPG, massively multiplayer online. And if you don't play it with people, you're missing out. And it seems like Yeshua is trying to get to those people who are playing by themselves, bringing them in, making them look, this is how you can do it with multiple people. That tacit understanding, training, and the ability to unlock your potential further. And the fact is, Yeshu does not limit you with what you have chosen. For example, there's this character in the novel called Qiao Yifan. He plays ninja originally, but he wasn't good at it. His original team just completely dumped him for his more talented friend, well, I'm not gonna say it, sorry. I love his friend, but still, I still don't find it fair that this team completely, ditched him for his friend, and he became, the reserve player, and not just reserve player, he's literally the babu of the team. If you don't know what babu is, search it up yourself. And then when he was just about to give up and step back because his skills at the ninja was pretty good, but not like pro level, Yesho came in and was like, based on your talents, like your reaction time and etc., you're a very good player. You have the instincts of a pro player. You just chose your class wrong. And this is something that a lot of people should know. If you do want to become a pro player at something, choosing a class that suits your abilities is much more important than choosing a class that you like to play. You're not a casual player, you're a pro player. But getting out from that lecture session, let's get into how Yeshu completely transformed Qiao Yifan. Qiao Yifan never thought of changing his class because he thought by being a ninja, he could be in the shadows and support his friend. However, Yeshu told him, you can be out of the shadows, but still, you can still be in the shadows and also out of the shadows by just changing your class because, well, that's what suits you. Yeshu is a walking dictionary, and everybody should remember that. He remembers every single thing about Glory, and he even pioneers the Glory esports scene, with the first technically esports scene being a competition between Yeshu and his ultimate lifelong rival, Han Wenqing. And the message behind this novel is beautiful. It's an online game doesn't make it so that you can just scam people online or something. No, but the experience that you have with people online is beautiful, and that experience sticks with you. And that experience is the most rewarding part of playing a game. And the second message is that moving forward doesn't necessarily mean gone with the old and in with the new. There are several old characters in the game, the oldest being Wei Chen, which is one of the oldest players in that scene. He was a powerful warlock, but just because he was beaten by a youngster, he left the team because he didn't think he was good enough and that the team would be better with the new member. That wasn't true. Wei Chen was still a good strategist. He was still a good player, but he gave up. The next player is someone who was never intended to be replaced, Han Wenqing. He was also old, and he was already at that age where most pro players retire. But instead of this is the thing. The cruel reality is that Han Wenqing trains every day so that he will not need to retire. And that's what makes his position in his team unshakable. And lastly, Ye Xiu. He wasn't a person who wants to retire, and he's actually still strong. He's kind of on his prime based on what the novel says. But he was cast away because his ideas about innovation does not apply with the company's idea about what's going to go on. It's mostly because Yesho doesn't receive endorsements, so they don't receive as much money. But at the same time, Yesho is such an invaluable asset that they let go. And instead of giving up being sad because he's replaced like Wei Chen, he stood back up and created a team out of random people he met online, and they actually reached glory, which is the title of the game actually. And so this will bring us to what makes me want to play games. It's all of it. The whole novel, the whole manga, the whole animation, the live action cemented my love for this series as well as like my interest in games. It's not just the customization, it's the experience, it's the relationship. You cannot get these kind of experience out of playing single player games, puzzle games, otome games, or anything. But at the same time, because my first interest in games is based on stories, that's what ended up like being the basis for my original decision on what game that I ended up playing first. Part 2, the first game I've ever played, Revelation Online. There's only one specific reason why I chose to play Revelation Online. It's free, it's not subscription, it's not paid, and it's good. Despite how many roast people put on the internet, I cannot deny that Revelation Online's story is awesome, and you cannot deny that Revelation Online story is awesome. Despite the core gameplay sometimes being boring and a lot of people sometimes thinking that the game does not make sense in a gameplay point of view, the game is amazing if you play it within like the initial release or if you play it in the Chinese server. But at the same time, who plays in the Chinese server at the time? Even I started playing in the English server first. In any case, the English server never got out of the beta test period, even until now. If you went to the download page, you wouldn't see anything, but after you download the launcher, there will be a warning at the bottom. This game is in beta form. Please do not take this as signs of what the final version is going to be. There's that text at the bottom. Even then, I know that it's supposed to already be fully developed and with a fully developed story. Sometimes there will be translation errors in the game. I understand. That's understandable. Sometimes there wouldn't be because it's pretty clear, but it's the story that got me to stay within Revelation Online. You guys might think, well, that just means that you're going to stay playing Revelation Online as a single player game. No, I went ahead and applied to become a guild officer at the time, and I play multiplayer. So the initial catch for Revelation Online is the story, and after the story ends, it's the relationship. Again, everything that makes me stay playing a game can be tracked back to the king's avatar. Let me give you an example story. I'm not going to do the main storyline. I will put a link in the description down below about the animated video playlist for for this game's animation, instead of me retelling the original story, but instead I will be talking about a different story which is available in game that is not animated yet. This story is the story that makes me think I really do have an in-game crush. And not because I created my dream man in the character creation menu, but because of the interaction with this person. So far, if it's still going, the footage that I use in this video is the footage from when I completed that specific quest. So here is the deal. There was this quest that will be different depending on your gender. If you're a male, then you will receive a female character. And if you're a female, you will receive a male character. I completely forgot who the female character is, but I still remember the male character's name, Bayard Farsal. Bayard Farsal is the son of the nobleman Farsal, who owns the biggest tea house and hot spring in Solan City. And his son was ill for many, many days. And the encounter of this quest is you will pass by the cherry blossom. Was it? Wait, no. You will pass by the hotel. Okay, I completely forgot about the start. You will pass by the hotel and saw a group of people beating up an old man. And when you came to talk with them, they're like, stay out of our business. And you beat them up and they run away and they say, old man, you will never get away with your scam. The old man ended up being an old doctor, and he told you that the reason that they beat him up is because he could not heal their young master, Bayard Farsal. And so he told you that to help him, you should probably talk with a sword mage disciple. Why? Because sword mage disciples can read constellations, and reading constellations means reading fate and being able to deal with all of that supernatural problems and stuff. So you went ahead and talked with a sword mage disciple who told you to go to Ursich Forest, which is a forest full of sakura trees. In the Ursich Forest, you met with a kid who was playing with a painting. That painting seems to be an expensive painting, and he threw it into the water, thus ruining the painting, I guess. Saving the painting, and you talk with Lily Ursina, who was angry. She's the guardian of the forest. She was angry because you ruined, I don't know what you ruined. It's like, oh, you stepped on cherry blossom petals. You're a bad guy now. Is literally Lily Ursina's whole personality. But at the same time, it's understandable. And Lily Ursina told you to accompany someone, like in exchange. Someone came up to you and introduced himself as Albios. And Obvious told you that he would want to go around Sulan. And yes, Obvious is the person that Lily Ursina told you to accompany in exchange for ruining everything, which is basically stepping on cherry blossom petals, actually. And there are hints about who Obvious really is. You smell ink every single time you are with Obvious. Obvious tried to exchange his painting for medicine because of the time that you saved him, I guess. And at the same time you tried getting it back because you knew how important that painting is to Obvious for some particular reason, but I guess knowing how Obvious cherished that painting to exchange for medicine for you, I guess that's the reason why. In any case, he even got you a souvenir and also sang for you. If you got Albios or Beard Varsal, you will receive that low voice singing. But if you got the girl one, you will receive a high voice. And I still remember how the song sounds like. It's like da 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 da. 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 See, I still remember it. That story really stuck with me for a long time. And then you went around walking with Obvious, even just for a little bit. And after that, he disappeared. He's literally gone. As soon as you got the painting back, you found out that that old man, knowing that you're trying to get the painting back for the exact same price of that medicine, scammed you kind of, and he ruined that painting, and Obvious was never found. So you went and talked with the sword mage disciple because of what I just said before. And he told you to go back to Ursich Forest. This time you don't have to talk to Lily Ursina again. And you met Bayard Farsal. This time, being the excited little, the excited girl I was, I went up to Bayard Farsal like, do you remember our date? And he's like, who are you? Apparently, the illness that Bayard Farsal has is he made a portrait of himself, and thus transferring part of his soul into the portrait because his portrait was so lifelike. And because of that self-portrait gained sentience and became Albios, which is also Bayard Farsal's alter ego or something. In any case, it became Albios. Albios, being a new spirit, wanted to go through heaven and earth and explore Sulan City, where he was created. But at the same time, he also knew that his existence is destroying Bayard Farsal little by little. In his existence, there is Bayard Farsal's soul, and that soul have to be gone for you to wake Bayard Farsal up. And Bayard Farsal has no recollection on what happened with his soul at that particular time. I was devastated. That was such a great montage of a relationship, and it was destroyed. And so I went and talked with Albios, who Lily Ursina popped in right now. Told, okay, if you want to meet him one last time, I will use some of my powers to help you do so. Without hurting Bayard Farsal, because you already received payment from treating him. I didn't even get how, but again, game logic. You went and talked with Albios at the end, and he said that the short time he spent with you is good enough. And he knew that with the painting gone, he would no longer have a physical form that he could manifest from, and thus he would be gone forever. And he said that his time as a spirit between heaven and earth has been extremely good because of us. And he would see us later. And even though I know that he's gone forever, because unlike the girl spirit who is a cherry blossom tree spirit who could possibly come back because cherry blossom trees are always flowering in game, Albios will never come back because he is a painting spirit and the painting is grabbed, gone, destroyed. There's no way that he would be able to come back again. And I was ugly crying the whole time. And this is just a side quest. It's not the main story. And you know what? Most of the quest that is written in this game was written by, like the story of the quest is written by an awesome author by the name of Jiangnan. And the reason why I want you to remember that name is because the next game has something to do with him. Jiangnan is a great author. He wrote 2 stories that are completely opposites of each other. And in this story, it completely showed the process of dealing with loss and how someone grows up after experiencing loss. Well, technically, they don't really show that montage of experiencing loss, but at the same time, the side quest, it also showed relationship between people in that world, the world building, the class stories. And one class stood up to me the most, which is the occultist. People might think an occultist is a person who practiced the occult. And in this game, an occultist is also someone who practiced the occult and has a lot to do with death. The reason why this person originally became an occultist is because he lost a person that is so dear to him that he touched the book of life and death and became the first occultist. However, no matter how many times he go back in time to save that girl that he loves, he never succeeded. It was such a great lesson. You cannot change the past no matter how many times you go back. You will never be able to change it. And it was such a huge message, and it was just a class promotional story. It wasn't even in the game. Okay, continuing on, I might continue on and on about how much I love the game. Well, I still love the game, but sadly the game is dead, and the leveling system ultimately doesn't allow you to grind solo. You would have to do a quest that would need at least 3 people to complete. And finding 3 people is hard now, so I ended up quitting the game because the game is dead. But along with me, I still have the story of the game, of the original game, not the Sky Feather Kingdom update. That update changes everything. I hate that update. The original story is such a great story written by Jiangnan, which also deals about darkness and how darkness will never be able to go away. But you can contain your own darkness and embrace your darkness, but not let it consume you. It's such an important message. It's like, it's okay to be depressed. It's okay to have misunderstandings. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to have negative emotions, but don't let negative emotions consume you. Don't let it erode your rationality. You can have that, but you can also deal with it the positive way. And what is the positive way? Talk. Many people might think the message of talk is something that is not like not uncommon. It's very common, it's very general, but it's the most important message of all. talk. Nobody are telepathies, or nobody can read minds. You have to talk. You have to talk over and over again until you get your point across. Why? Because nobody can read minds. So the message of talk to solve problems is not a weak message. It's a strong message because somehow nobody knew the importance of talking. It's like, no, you cannot solve world hunger by just talking. Well, you can. No, you cannot solve A without talking, or B with talking. You can solve it with talking, and this message is ultimately like the whole premise of the whole story. Talk, 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 talk to the end. The final boss became a final boss because he doesn't want to talk with the person he trusted the most, and caused a misunderstanding, and it clouded his rationality because he doesn't want to talk. Okay, out with the story which brought me to continue playing this game, and what other stuff that makes me continue play the game. Well, only one. My guild. And the game guild is everything. And the reason why I say that Revelation Online is one of the games that makes me feel like I'm in glory is because if you're in a guild, you are able to establish 50 people parties, 100 people parties. And it's amazing. When Revelation Online is in its peak busiest times, you would even see those 100 people parties, and as those guild parties fight for a world boss resource, usually a great weapon, a gold weapon, or like materials to craft a gold weapon or a gold weapon blueprint, well, it's amazing. It wasn't like a 5 people party, and it wasn't like just people versus monsters. No, those are like guild versus guilds, exactly as how Glory described it, how the King's Avatar described it. And that is also another reason why I stuck with it, because of the guild system. Who doesn't want that 100 versus 100 guild battles? Who doesn't want that 50 people party versus 50 people party dealing with a world boss? Who doesn't want that? Contribution points will also allow you to redeem items from the guild, So, for example, if I put in a gold weapon, I could arrange 2 types. Contribution points that allows people to use that item or rent that item, and contribution points that will allow people to buy the item from the guild completely. It was such a wonderful mechanic, and it's almost exactly like Glory. That is why Revelation Online was one of the games that makes me feel like Glory could truly exist, except for the silver weapon or silver equipment creation tab. I was very disappointed about that. Well, enough with that. Let us go to the next part. The second game I played. Remember, it has something to do with Jiangnan. The second game I played, Dragon Raja. So it's not really the second game I played if you counted the times that I've played, but it's the second game where I stuck for more than 3 months. I do have a rule where I try out a game for 3 months, and if I don't stick around after 3 months, that means that game is boring to me. I don't want to continue playing that game. Bye-bye game. That's literally the whole premise of 3 months rule. And Dragon Raja is the next game that doesn't make me leave after 3 months. The record is still Revelation Online. I played that game for 4 years, almost daily, with like my gaming schedule becoming less and less at the end, with me just helping guild members, and then guild members started to leave, and then players started to leave, and it's dead, and I somehow lost my account after the Skyfeather update. So yeah, whatever. And I ultimately quit. Okay, so what does Dragon Raja and Revelation Online have in common? It's written by Jiang Nan. Jiang Nan is such a legendary author, and I could not stress that enough. All of the stories that Jiang Nan wrote is completely to my taste. And the reason why I also say that Jiang Nan is such a legendary author is because the plot of Dragon Raja, which is originally a novel turned into a game, and the plot of Revelation Online, which is a game turned into animation to comic to blah blah blah, is completely opposite of each other. On one hand, you have Revelation Online, whose plot completely revolves around how do I say this? Around dragons, and the people over there worship dragons. Dragons are seen as symbol of power, and dragons are, technically speaking, like one of the most powerful. And they even like have a good relationship with dragons actually. On the other hand, Dragon Raja's plot is completely about hating dragons, about dragons being bad, even though dragons are also those kind of deities like Odin or Loki. Those are dragons in the Dragon Raja world. Like Susanoo is also a dragon, and Tsukuyomi is also a dragon. Every single like deity that you can find in every single mythology could be a dragon, and the creation of the Dragon Raja world is based on two dragons. The first dragon is the Dark Dragon, whose name is, I forgot, because again the names are pretty hard to remember. It's N something, if I remember correctly. And then the second part, the Dark Dragon created a being so similar to itself because it is bored and it needs friends, and it created the Light Dragon, also called Constantine. Oh, I remember the Black Dragon's name is Nidhogg. So Nidhogg created Constantine, which is the Light Dragon, which is the exact same as itself. However, Constantine was thirsty for power. It was created to be the exact same as a Nidhogg, but at the same time, it could not accept being a being that is lower than Nidhogg, even though it is created to be the exact same being. And so Constantine created a revolt against Nidhogg. At this time, Nidhogg, which is pretty much bored, also created humans, I guess. And humans, hybrids ended up destroying dragons, or the things that created them in that world. Dragon Raja, the game, followed the plot of the third book, or the third book in the series, since the third book has 3 smaller plot lines in it, which is when the team goes to Japan. The first 2 books, the first book is about how Luminous, or the main character, found out that he's actually a hybrid. Again, the plot line of the game is pretty weird, to be honest. If you add in the main character, completely different from Revelation Online, where the whole plot line revolves around the main character, and without the main character, the main plot became so weird, as you can see in the animation, to be honest. And then there's Dragon Raja, where the original plot line doesn't even need the main character, and adding in the main character just makes it weird. However, I cannot complain because after playing Revelation Online, I was so smitten with Jiangnan's writing that I went ahead and read the his like Dragon Raja novel in RAWs, which is completely in Chinese, with the help of my trusty translator, which is definitely not Google Translate at the time, my trusty translator to help me translate words that are too hard for me to understand. Most of the time, there are names. Yes, most of the time, there are names. So I went ahead, played the game, and I was disappointed about the core gameplay. But I was so excited about the story that I was willing to ignore the core gameplay. But sooner or later, after 1 year, I got tired because I literally completed the story that is available at that particular moment in time. By that particular moment in time, I mean the story will not progress any further, and I have read the novel myself and know what's going to happen. So again, I just feel like there's no need for me to play the game anymore. It's becoming tiring. That's another reason why you shouldn't let story become the basis of choosing a game, because if the story ends, you will be bored unless you're playing Revelation Online, which is an ultimate great experience that will remind you of a novel that you once read. Never mind. So let's continue on with Dragon Raja. Now, what makes Dragon Raja stick? The story. And the story of Dragon Raja has more things in it, like more messages, more morals, and more moral teachings compared to the story of Revelation Online. There was one line in particular that I would never forget in Dragon Raja, no matter how many times someone wiped my memory out. And that is the sentence that the character Z said to Renata. Renata was betrayed by her parents, who ended up using her because of their thirst for experiments. They put Renata inside an experimental facility because they want to experiment, and they put it in Renata so that they could join the experiments. Well, there's more detail to that, but that's literally the summary of it. And I was enraged when I first encountered this plot. Renata became close to a character called Z, which is also called 000, because he's codename Zero, and one of the successful hybrids that was created artificially. Previous hybrids are because of bloodline, because hybrids, nobody know how they are created. But this experiment wanted to make a hybrid into a true blood dragon. 000 was the first experiment that was going to highly likely succeed. However, knowing what's going to happen, 000, also known as Z, hit his own powers, so that even though based on bodily data he's supposed to be the first one to succeed, he pretends that he doesn't succeed. Okay, I should have put the warning at the start about the spoiler for Dragon Raja, but still everything is spoilery, so I could not put the link for the novel down below for several reasons actually, but at the same time, you can go ahead and look for the novel Dragon Raja. It's not that hard. Okay, so that one line that I can always like get distracted from saying is because Renata felt betrayed that the people she loves betrays her. Z said one line that immediately makes me think, if only men in real life can be as dependable as he is. Like, men my age, my generation, I mean. His line is, if you need to love someone and be able to put your love in that person in order to stay alive, in order to have the will to stay alive, then love me. Z or 000 have no actual experience outside of the experimental facility. And yet, okay, and yet he still said that. If you need to love someone in order to live, then love me, is what he said. And in order to love someone, in order to live, it's like you're giving all your trust to that person. And Zed and Renata has that kind of trust in their relationship, which is hard to find nowadays. And that line continues to be with me forever. And I feel like if I can put all my love to someone, trusting them with that, and having to love them in order to live, that's probably that one person that I would eventually be with, I guess. At the same time, I know that I would barely find anybody like that in the real life, but that's so romantic that stuck with me. And that was one of the greatest love lines in history. You cannot change my mind. Not even Romeo and Juliet can come as close as Romeo and Juliet is a tragedy anyway. Can come as close as Z and Renata. Not a single romantic novel or romantic movie, romantic lines, anything romantic can come close to that kind of love and trust between Z and Renata. And okay, ranting about the novel done, let's go back into why I played Dragon Raja and why I eventually quit it. I wasn't very focused on combat in Dragon Raja. Instead, I was more focused on simulation. I have a shop and I'm a chef. And for some time, I was obsessed with recreating the recipe of Dragon Raja food, which is actually real food instead of Genshin, which is literally an iteration of food in real life. And it was a great experience. I was in a guild where a lot of people took care of me. They will always remind us when world bosses are up and for us to farm the world bosses to get coins in order to possibly get costumes and stuff. I was very, very happy being in that guild. But with time, the need for you to spend money increases. If you don't spend money, you would have to play at least 12 hours every day. And that kind of grind is too much for me. I would rather prefer my current Otome card collection games where you only need to grind for like, 1 hour each day? That's enough. And so I quit because the core gameplay is boring, the story could no longer keep me in, and the simulation is also starting to become more like a grind. I play the game not so that I feel like I have a second job as a chef, or so that I feel like I have a second job as a shop owner. It's not like I can get that money that I get from opening my shop and selling my food in game back to real life. So in the end, I quit because the motivation is not that big. And I start to get more and more depressed as I see more and more players purchasing coupons, getting cosmetics, and becoming looking cool and all. Meanwhile, me being there wearing my only premium clothing because that's the only clothing that I can get for free, I guess. Even though I mix and match several things. My character was made in the likeness of a dragon. And that is probably one of the only thing why I have all of these screenshots of my character now. And so that is all about why I stick with Dragon Raja. The conclusion is just one. It's story. And now let's get into the conclusion part of this video. As I mentioned in the previous parts of this video, which is the King's Avatar and why it got me into gaming, Revelation Online, and how come I spent 4 years playing that trashy game that almost every gamer in YouTube presents. And lastly, Dragon Raja and why I actually played Dragon Raja. Okay. In the end, everything went back to one. I got into gaming because of a novel, and I continued to play games because of story. No matter how good the gameplay is, I would always be that little terrified chicken healer support character that would always be at the back, or a mage that will always be at the back dealing support damage because I'm that kind of person. But I'm also that kind of person who got good timing and good sense of, wait, I should put this and that. But at the same time, I wasn't that type of player that would actually be like competitive enough to the point of being a pro player like Yeshio, Han Wenqing, and Wei Chen are in the novel. I don't have that kind of want to become a pro player despite reading a novel. All I want is having that rich multiplayer experience that is described in Glory, which I found while playing Revelation Online and which I do not find when I play Dragon Raja. The reason why I play Genshin, even though it is nothing like Glory, is because I now find my preference. I do not play a game because of gameplay. I play a game because first and foremost, story, which Genshin is really good at, and the second part is the experience with the community. And no matter how toxic the Genshin community seems on Twitter, it's only on Twitter anyway. A lot of the smaller Genshin communities that I find in Discord are good, helpful people that I always have fun with on a daily basis. We would discuss, and the one thing that keeps the whole community together is the fact that the core members of the community does not exceed 1,000, maybe just a few hundred, or even not even 50 members. You get it? Okay. And that is what makes the player experience of Genshin fun. That gameplay with that smaller community. You don't have to relate with the bigger Genshin community. You just need to have that small community where you belong. And the player experience is going to be great. I'm not going to talk about Genshin story because, well, the story is great and everybody can see it. And my whole life, if I like something, I will remember something. And so after this, I will make several videos about Revelation Online and its story and what makes me stick for it, like what the story that makes me stick with it for 4 years, not including the obvious story that I already told in this video. Well, that is all for me. Thanks for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and ring the notification bell so I can make sure that I see you guys in the next video. Bye!